Let's talk security cameras. It's something that we all want, but we know that once we let Google or Amazon or whoever is making the camera into our home, we are giving up much more than we think. For example, even if these cameras are not recording, they are still listening to all of the wireless information that's around them. They're collecting all sorts of data and sharing it with the company. Read those terms and conditions. They're pretty frightening. How do we get the benefit of these connected security cameras, all while giving up as little information as possible? The first thing you want to do is prevent the security camera from accessing your actual residential IP address. This is because it's going to use that information for marketing purposes and is willing to sell it to anybody, including people who are mad at you and try to gather information on what's going on inside your house digitally. How do we prevent it from getting access to your residential IP address while still functioning as it should? Well, we're going to set up a dedicated VPN router for it. Guess what? You can have more than one VPN router in your house. For example, you can have the first VPN router using provider A out of Los Angeles, the second VPN router using provider B out of New York. You're going to connect the security cameras to that second router. So as far as it knows, it's coming out of somewhere in New York City. So if anyone tries to buy your data, good luck, they're going to be in a completely different state. Once you have it on a separate network, that's a great start, but you also want to go into the settings of every single one of those cameras, and you want to disable all of the sharing. By default, all of these cameras and the accounts associated with these cameras have their settings set as wide open as possible to collect as much data as possible. So you need to log into the cameras themselves using the interface, and that's usually on the box, tells you how to access the interface. Usually it's through a web browser and typing in a set of numbers, and then you also want to access the account that controls all of those cameras. Some major account providers are, and make sure you opt out of any sharing in those accounts. We also discussed the principles of opening an account. Remember, maybe you don't want to use first dot last name. Maybe your password should be a long passphrase and different than all of your other passwords. Secure the account just like we talked about in the previous video. You might also want to consider using different camera ecosystems for different parts of your house. For example, I use a different ecosystem on the outside and on the inside of my house. This way, there isn't one single ecosystem that has all of the information required to do a survey of my house. Somebody would have to hack two ecosystems in order to be able to look inside and outside of my house. Moreover, I like using cameras that aren't battery powered or wireless. I like using wired cameras that require power to be plugged into the wall. This way, I can just unplug it when I'm not using it. Anytime I walk into my house, I have a kill switch that'll turn off all of my cameras physically. If you don't have that, then what you could do is you could always take down the network that the cameras are connected to, meaning that second router. Whenever you don't want your cameras to be on, you can turn that router off and your camera simply won't have any access to the internet. I like having my external cameras on all the time, so I actually only do this for my internal cameras. My internal cameras, I make sure to turn them off and the Wi-Fi network associated with them every single time I walk in the house. So yes, that does mean that my setup have a third router. I have one router for my exterior cameras, one router for my interior cameras, and we're actually going to go through an entire video on how I set up my home network next.